Most people know that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam changed the world, but almost nobody knows the real story of how it happened. They don't know about the night he was born when the stars aligned. They don't know about the man who raised him in the desert. They don't know about the moment he ran away from Mecca, hunted by assassins, with only one companion beside him. They don't know that the most powerful man in Arabia was about to lose everything because of one message. This is not the story you've heard before. This is the untold life of the final prophet, the moments that shaped humanity's destiny, the struggles that broke him, and the faith that saved him. The year was 570 CE. Mecca was not a place of peace. It was a city of chaos, ambition, and endless competition. The Quraysh tribe ruled with iron fists, controlling trade routes and accumulating wealth while the poor suffered in the streets. Idolatry had infected every corner of Arabian society. Hundreds of false gods were worshipped in the Kaaba. Infanticide was practiced without shame. A father could bury his own daughter alive because she was not a son. This was the darkness that covered Arabia before dawn. In the midst of this spiritual blindness, a child was born. His name was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, son of Abdullah. But his birth was unlike any other. The historians tell us that on the night he was born, the Persian palace of Kisra shook with such violence that its towers cracked and fell. 14 of its walls collapsed. The lake of Sawa, which had not dried for centuries, suddenly evaporated. The fires of the Zoroastrian temple went out for the first time in generations. These were not coincidences. These were signs that something extraordinary had entered the world. His mother Amina came from the noble family of Banu Zuhra. His father Abdullah was a man of good character and standing among the Quraysh. But Abdullah died before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was even born. This child would grow up without ever knowing his father's face. He would never experience the warmth of a father's embrace, never hear his father's wisdom, never walk beside him through the streets of Mecca. Instead, he would be raised in the harsh, unforgiving desert of Arabia. When Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was just 6 days old, his mother took him to his grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib, the most respected man in Mecca. And in that moment, something profound happened. His grandfather looked at the newborn child and made a declaration that would echo through history. He said, "I have named him Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam." It was an unusual name. Not the name of a king or a warrior. Not a name of power or prestige. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam means the praised one. His grandfather had seen something in this child. He had understood that this boy would be remembered and honored by people across the ages. But tragedy struck early. When Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was only 2 years old, his mother Amina died. He lost her in the village of Abwa, far from home. The child who had already lost his father now lost his mother. He was alone, an orphan in a world that showed no mercy to the poor and powerless, yet Allah had a different plan. His uncle Abu Talib, one of the few men of principle in Mecca, took him in and raised him as his own son. Abu Talib was not wealthy, but he was noble. He was not famous, but he was respected. And he gave Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam something more valuable than money or status. He gave him unconditional love. As Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam grew up in the house of Abu Talib, something became clear. This boy was different. He did not participate in the idolatry of Mecca. He did not join the other young men in their drinking and gambling and chasing of worldly pleasures. Instead, he spent his time thinking, reflecting, wondering about the truth. He would often leave the city and go into the cave of Hijrah, high in the mountains surrounding Mecca, to think deeply about the meaning of life and the nature of God. As Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam grew into a young man, he began to work as a merchant. He was known throughout Mecca for his honesty and his integrity. In a city where deception was the norm, where cheating and fraud were accepted as part of business, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood out. People called him Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. Even those who rejected his message later would admit that they had never caught him in a lie. His reputation was so solid that when wealthy merchants needed someone to trade on their behalf, they chose Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of these merchants was a woman named Khadijah. She was successful, independent, and respected in Mecca. A rare thing for a woman in that time. She had been married twice before, and she had wealth and status, but she was also searching for something real in a world of fakeness. When she hired Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to trade her goods on a journey to Syria, she saw something in him that no one else seemed to understand. She saw a man who was different, a man with integrity, a man with depth. During that journey to Syria, something remarkable happened. Khadijah's servant, Maysara, witnessed Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam praying beneath two trees. And when Maysara looked up, he saw the trees moving to provide shade over Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, protecting him from the scorching desert sun. It was as if creation itself was acknowledging his presence. When they returned to Mecca, Khadijah asked Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to marry her. And despite the age difference, she was 40, he was 25, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam accepted. This marriage was transformative. Khadijah became his first believer, his closest companion, and his greatest source of strength. While the rest of Arabia rejected his message, Khadijah never doubted. While his enemies plotted against him, Khadijah stood by his side. While the pressure became unbearable, Khadijah reminded him of his purpose. They had 6 children together, 2 sons and 4 daughters. But more importantly, she gave Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam something he had lost as a child. She gave him a family. For 15 years, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived a quiet life in Mecca. He had a wife he loved, children who depended on him, a successful business, and a good reputation. He could have lived out his days in comfort and security. But something was stirring within him, something deeper than material success, something more powerful than worldly comfort. He spent more and more time in the cave of Hijrah, meditating and reflecting on the spiritual emptiness of Arabia. The Quraysh worshipped idols made of stone and wood. They bowed down to false gods that could not hear them, could not help them, could not see them. Yet they felt no shame. They had inherited this idolatry from their ancestors, and they perpetuated it without question. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam could see the absurdity of it all. He could feel the spiritual hunger of the people, even if they could not. He knew there had to be something more, something real, something true. Night after night he would sit in the darkness of Hira cave, alone with his thoughts, asking the same question: what is the truth? Who is God really? Why do people worship these false idols? What is my purpose in this world? He was searching, he was seeking. He did not know that the answer was about to change everything. The month of Ramadan, the year 610 CE, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was meditating in the cave of Hira, as he always did, waiting for the answer that had eluded him for so long. He was 40 years old. He had lived a full life. He had experienced success and failure, joy and loss, comfort and struggle, but he had never experienced what was about to happen. Then, without warning, everything changed. A presence filled the cave, not a presence he could see clearly, but a presence he could feel with absolute certainty. A voice, powerful, commanding, unmistakable, spoke words that would transform human history forever. The voice said, "Iqra, read, recite, proclaim." Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was terrified. He did not understand what was happening. He tried to speak, but he could not. His heart was pounding, his body was shaking, the presence was overwhelming, all-consuming. It felt like his very soul was being gripped by something beyond his comprehension. The voice spoke again. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaqa. Recite in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot. Recite, and your Lord is the most generous. These were the first words of the Quran, the first revelation, the moment when Allah's message began to enter the world through the heart and mind of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not understand. He had never been a poet. He had never been a speaker. He had no training, no preparation. How could he recite? How could he proclaim? He ran from the cave, his heart in his throat, his mind spinning with confusion and fear. He did not know if he was losing his mind. He did not know if he was being tested by a jinn or possessed by an evil spirit. He ran down the mountain, desperate to reach home, desperate to find someone who could make sense of what had just happened. When he reached his house, he burst through the door and cried out to Khadija, "Cover me! Cover me!" He was shaking uncontrollably. His wife wrapped him in blankets, holding him close, trying to calm him down. And as he lay there, trembling with fear and awe, he told her everything. He told her about the presence in the cave. He told her about the overwhelming power of it. He told her about the voice and the words. Khadija did not hesitate. She did not doubt. She did not tell him he was crazy or that he was imagining things. Instead, she said something that would sustain him through the most difficult years of his life. She said, "By Allah, Allah will never humiliate you. You are kind to your relatives, you speak the truth, you help the poor, you are generous to your guests, and you help those who are struck by calamities." She believed in him. In that moment when doubt and fear were threatening to overwhelm him, his wife believed, and she took him to her cousin, Waraka ibn Nawfal, an old Christian scholar who knew the scriptures and the prophecies. Waraka listened to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam account of what had happened, and his old eyes filled with tears. He said, "This is the same Namus, the same angel who came to Musa alayhi salam. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are the prophet of these people." But then Waraka added something that would prove to be prophetic. "If I live to see the day when your people expel you from Mecca, I will help you." And he died a few days later. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not understand the meaning of those words until years later, when the persecution became unbearable and he was forced to flee his own city. For weeks after the first revelation, there was silence. No more messages came. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam waited and waited, but the presence did not return. He was beginning to fear that it had all been a dream, a hallucination, something that his mind had created. Depression began to set in. Doubt began to creep into his heart. Was he really a prophet? Or was he just a man who had imagined something that never really happened? But then suddenly the revelations began again. And this time they did not stop. Day after day, month after month, year after year, the words of Allah continued to come to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sometimes they came gently, sometimes they came with overwhelming force, sometimes they contained comfort and reassurance, sometimes they contained warnings and stern rebukes, but they always came with the truth. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew with absolute certainty that these words were not from him. They came from beyond him. They came from Allah. For 3 years, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam preached Islam in secret. He gathered his closest followers, his wife Khadija, his young cousin Ali, his freed slave Zayd ibn Haritha, and a handful of others, and taught them the message of Islam in the safety of his home and in hidden places around Mecca. They were like a candle in the darkness, a small light burning in a city consumed by spiritual blindness. But secrets cannot remain hidden forever. Eventually, the Quraysh found out, and when they did, their reaction was swift and merciless. The leaders of Mecca gathered and realized that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a threat to everything they had built. Their wealth depended on the pilgrims who came to worship the idols in the Kaaba. Their power depended on keeping the people ignorant and divided. Their status depended on the system of idolatry and tribalism that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was now challenging. They could not allow this man to continue. The persecution began. It started with insults and mockery. The young men of Mecca would follow Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the streets, laughing at him, calling him a madman, a poet, a sorcerer. They would say that he was possessed by jinns, that he was crazy, that no one should listen to him. But Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam remained patient. He did not respond with anger. He did not fight back with violence. Instead, he continued to speak the truth. But mockery soon turned to violence. The Quraysh began to physically attack the Muslims. They would beat them in the streets. They would torture them in the desert heat. They would starve them. They would humiliate them in front of their families. A slave named Bilal, who had become Muslim, was dragged into the desert by his master and left in the scorching sun with a heavy stone placed on his chest. Yet, even as he was dying, he whispered, "Ahad, Ahad, one, one," referring to the oneness of Allah. An elderly woman named Sumayya was tortured until she died, becoming the first martyr of Islam. Her son Yasir watched his mother die for her faith, and though his heart broke, his belief in Allah never wavered. These were not stories of weakness or defeat. These were stories of extraordinary courage. These were people who had discovered something more valuable than their own lives: the truth. Muhammad's sallallahu alaihi wasallam's own family suffered as well. His uncle Abu Lahab, the richest man in Mecca and a leader of the Quraysh, became one of his fiercest enemies. Abu Lahab and his wife would mock Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam publicly, would spread rumors about him, and would do everything in their power to destroy his reputation. Meanwhile, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's other uncle, Abu Talib, who had raised him as a child, refused to embrace Islam, but also refused to abandon his nephew. Abu Talib would protect Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the worst of the persecution, using his influence and his status to shield the Prophet from assassination. The Quraysh tried a different strategy. They offered Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam money. They offered him power. They offered him status. They said, "If you stop preaching against our gods, we will make you the richest man in Mecca. We will make you a leader among us. We will give you anything you want." But Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam refused every offer. He said, "If they placed the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, I would not turn away from this message." The persecution intensified. The Quraysh imposed a boycott on the Muslims and on the Hashim family, which included Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's own clan. No one was allowed to buy from them or sell to them. No one was allowed to marry into their families. They were cut off from society, left to starve. For 3 years, this boycott continued. Muhammad's sallallahu alaihi wasallam family suffered terribly. Food was scarce, money was scarce, hope seemed to be disappearing. During this dark period, something happened that would break Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's heart in a way that physical persecution never could. His beloved wife Khadijah fell ill. After 25 years of marriage, after standing by him through every hardship, after being his greatest source of strength and comfort, Khadijah died. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wept. He held her in his arms as her life slipped away, and he felt a grief so profound that it seemed like the world itself was coming to an end. Khadijah had been his rock. She had believed in him when no one else did. She had supported him when everyone else was against him. She had given him children and a home and unconditional love, and now she is gone. That year became known as the Year of Sorrow in Islamic history. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had lost not just his wife, but his best friend, his closest confidant, his greatest supporter. But even in his deepest grief, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not give up. He did not abandon his mission. The message of Islam continued to spread, slowly but surely, like water seeping into the ground. By the 10th year of his preaching, the Quraysh realized that their persecution was not working. Islam was still growing. The Muslims were still believing. The message was still spreading. 13 years had passed since Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam first received the revelation in the cave of Hijrah. 13 years of preaching, 13 years of persecution, 13 years of suffering. Only about 100 people had accepted Islam in Mecca. The city seemed impossible to change. The Quraysh seemed determined to crush him. The future looked bleak. But then something unexpected happened. A delegation from the city of Medina arrived in Mecca. Medina was a city in the north, about 200 miles away from Mecca. It was different from Mecca. Instead of being united under one powerful tribe, Medina was divided between two rival Arab tribes, the Aws and the Khazraj. These two tribes were constantly fighting each other. The streets of Medina ran with blood. Families were torn apart by feuds that had lasted for generations. The city was tearing itself apart from within. Some of the people from Medina had heard about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the message of Islam. They had heard that he preached about the oneness of God and the equality of all people before Allah. They had heard that Islam could unite people, could bring peace, could heal the divisions that were destroying their city. So they came to Mecca to meet him. When they spoke to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, something ignited within them. The message of Islam was exactly what their city needed. It offered them a way out of the endless cycle of violence. It offered them a path to unity and brotherhood. It offered them hope, and they accepted Islam immediately. These new believers returned to Medina and began spreading the message among their people. They talked about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They talked about the Quran. They talked about the principles of Islam. And remarkably, people listened. Within a year, a significant portion of Medina had accepted Islam. The rival tribes began to see themselves not as enemies, but as brothers united under the banner of Allah. The following year, a much larger delegation came from Medina. This time, they came not just to accept Islam, but to invite Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to come and live among them. They said, "O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have accepted your message. Our people believe in Allah and His oneness. Come to Medina and be our leader. Bring your followers with you. Live with us in safety and peace." Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked them, "Will you protect me?" And they said, "Yes. By Allah, we will protect you just as we protect our own families." This was a tremendous decision. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was being invited to leave Mecca, the city of his birth, the city of the Kaaba, the city where he had spent his entire life. He was being invited to start a new community in a different place, with people he had just met. The Quraysh found out about this plan, and they were furious. They realized that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was going to leave Mecca and establish his Islamic state in Medina. They realized that if he left, his influence would only grow. His religion would spread beyond their control. They could not allow this to happen. They decided to assassinate him. They gathered in a council room and made a plan. They selected young men from every tribe in Mecca, one from each tribe, and gave them a mission. When Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam leaves the city, they must find him and kill him. By distributing the assassination among all the tribes, no single family would be responsible, and no single family could take revenge. It was a clever plan, and it was designed to be foolproof. But Allah had a different plan. On the night that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was supposed to flee Mecca, the assassins gathered outside his house. They could see his shadow on the window moving back and forth. They prepared themselves for the kill. But inside the house, something miraculous was happening. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, young cousin Ali, was sleeping in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam bed, wearing Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam clothes, while Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself was not in the house at all. He had left through another way, taking his companion Abu Bakr with him. Abu Bakr was not a warrior. He was not a powerful man. He was a merchant, a gentle soul, a deeply faithful believer. But when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him to accompany him on this dangerous journey to Medina, Abu Bakr did not hesitate. He was willing to leave everything behind, his family, his wealth, his business, his home, to be with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to support him in his mission. As they rode through the dark desert, heading north toward Medina, the Quraysh realized what had happened. They had been outwitted. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had escaped. They sent riders after him, determined to catch him and bring him back. At one point, the Quraysh horsemen came so close that they could see Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr in the distance. Abu Bakr was afraid. He turned to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, "O Prophet, they are coming closer and closer. I'm afraid they will catch us." And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with absolute faith in Allah, turned to his companion and said words that echo through eternity, "Do not be sad. Surely Allah is with us." In that moment, surrounded by danger, fleeing for his life, facing the possibility of capture and death, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam demonstrated the deepest truth of Islam. He was not afraid because he trusted in Allah completely. He knew that Allah would protect him. He knew that this mission was divinely ordained. He knew that nothing could stop the will of Allah. And miraculously, the Quraysh did not find them. Some narrations say that Allah caused a spider to weave a web over the entrance of the cave where they were hiding, or that Allah caused birds to nest at the entrance, making it look like no one had entered there for a long time. Others say that Allah simply protected them with His invisible hand, making them unable to be seen by the pursuers. When Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr finally arrived in Medina, something extraordinary happened. The entire city came out to greet them. They lined the streets, they sang, they celebrated, they welcomed their new leader with joy and enthusiasm. This was not just the arrival of a man. This was the beginning of a new era. This was the moment when Islam transformed from a persecuted minority in one city into the foundation of a new civilization. The migration from Mecca to Medina, known as the Hijrah, marked the beginning of the Islamic calendar. Everything that came before was BC, before change. Everything that came after was AD, after the declaration. Because in that moment, when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam arrived in Medina with nothing but his faith, his companion, and his message, a new world was born. The Quraysh had tried everything. They had mocked him. They had tortured his followers. They had offered him bribes. They had imposed boycotts. They had plotted his assassination. And yet, despite all of this, the message of Islam had survived. More than that, it had thrived. More than that, it had spread to a new city that was waiting to receive it. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had lost everything in Mecca. He had lost his comfort, he had lost his wife, he had lost his family, he had lost the city of his birth, but he had gained something infinitely more valuable. He had gained the trust of an entire people. He had gained the foundation for the greatest civilization that humanity would ever know, and most importantly, he had remained true to his mission. He had never wavered. He had never compromised. He had never given up on the truth. This is the untold story of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not as a distant historical figure, but as a real human being who suffered, who grieved, who was afraid, but who never lost faith in Allah. This is the story of a man who had nothing but was given everything. This is the story of how one person, armed only with the truth, changed the entire course of human history. And it is a story that still speaks to us today, reminding us that when we believe deeply enough, when we trust in Allah completely, when we remain true to our principles no matter what the cost, nothing in this world can stop us from achieving our purpose.